Good evening and welcome everyone to the May 7, 2026 meeting of Glendale's Charter Review Committee.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Committee members Durham, Flower,
Here.
Garibian,
Here.
Haratunian,
Here.
Karapetian, Monassarian,
Here.
Meek,
Here.
Megardician,
Present.
Miller, Povolitis,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
and you.
Okay. Notwithstanding we're missing a few people tonight, we do have a quorum. So next item is the business agenda, report of the recording secretary.
The agenda for the May 7, 2026 Charter Review Committee meeting was posted on Friday, May 1st, 2026 before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item is oral communications. Do we have any speakers?
We currently have 2 speakers.
All right. Per the stated agenda, each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. First speaker, please.
First speaker, Rudy.
I'm giving my minutes to Herbert Milano.
Our second speaker, Herbert Milano.
Mr. Milano, thank you. You have 6 minutes.
Members of the Charter Review, for the past year, I've been making presentations to you on the significance of your role in the future history of Glendale. I cannot underemphasize just how critical and important it is for you to take action to change the direction of the city. And I'm going to give you a presentation that should make you feel very, very uncomfortable. I have before you a chart that you also have a copy before you. It is my interpretation of the way the city of Glendale works as an extractive organization, not a government for you or for the public or for us, as an entity that serves special interests. And this particular graph shows 2 sections. One section to the left shows the loop that we have whenever there is an interest in somebody running for office with an endorsement by police and fire primarily as a way of getting elected. In the year 2005, John Draymond ran for city council. He failed. In 2007, he ran for city council while being supported by the Glendale Fire Department. He won. And he won significantly. This is a gentleman who eventually was found to have been making deals with one developer in particular and got his condominium completely remodeled. He was never charged. He was never indicted. He also embezzled money as well. And this gentleman ran and he was successful. He was a city council member. He was a mayor. But there is a way in which individuals get a quid pro quo with regard to the deals, with regard to the unions. And we find the data shows that for the past 25 years, the Glendale associations for police and fire, the employee associations, have been able to get out of Glendale over $1.2 billion in excess from what it was in the year 2000. How does that happen, that we get extracted that much money that could be used to provide parkland, to provide infrastructure, to provide for our roads? There is a relationship because the benefits were so outrageous, 50% increase right off the bat. It was available to any employee 30 years back, and the action was taken in less than 60 seconds without any type of discussion. That's the legacy that we're living with regard to our budget woes. A significant benefit that shows up on the financial statements and on the payroll. The other section of this extraction occurs as to why would somebody want to run for city council? You would imagine that maybe it's status or concern, but we have $1 billion a year in appropriations, hundreds of millions of dollars that are not being audited in contracts. And I provided you that study several months ago. Over 93 contracts exceeding over $1 billion, and these are only the contracts of exceeding $1 million, and only 3 were audited. And that's the chart on the right side. So the bottom 2 sections on that chart, on the left is the MOU that takes place behind closed doors, of course legally behind closed doors without our input, And the other one on the bottom right-hand side, which is the Audit Committee, which we will be discussing later on today. And if those two are weak, it allows that system to work. It allows contracts to be done and performed in such a way that you get cost overruns and they never get audited. You have change orders, and there are companies that just do change order after change order, contracts that double, and there is no auditing taking place. Why? Because as of today, for example, they only have one person doing that function for a city of $1 billion. And one of those positions has been vacant on purpose. An audit committee that, in my opinion, needs at least an audit function that needs at least 6 individuals, some just dedicated to the process of reviewing contracts. That's not taking place. And that's why this system attracts individuals not to serve you, but to serve themselves and the people that they want. That section, in my opinion, is corruption in front of you. It's an extractive system, and the data shows it. And there is enough data that I will be submitting this to the Justice Department. There is a public integrity division. Anyone looking carefully at this data will see that the structure that we have is extractive. And that's why our taxes continue to go up, our fees continue to go up, and we have the same roads in the same bad situation that we had 40 years ago. Until you feel uncomfortable enough to be able to question whether your feelings about a particular electoral process is good or whether you like a candidate, I'm trying to take you away from that feeling of comfort and look at what the data is telling you. And the 25-page report that I submitted to you about a month ago, or maybe it was a couple of months ago, all of it comes from the financial statements and from the responses from the California Public Records Act. Nothing is made up, and I'm willing to stand behind it. It is up to this committee to create the structures to bring back Glendale to a place where there is accountability on both of those sections. If you do that, we'll improve governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Thank you. Chair, at this point, we have no more speakers or callers.
All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2026. Draft minutes were in the packet. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to the minutes? If not, floor is open for a motion to approve.
I so move.
I second.
All right, motion from Mr. Meek, second from Mr. Smith. Can we just do a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I
One
abstain.
abstention.
I abstain.
Abstain.
Okay,
3.
all right. Can we get a roll call? I didn't keep count.
Committee members Durham, Flower,
Aye.
Garibian,
Yes.
Hartunian,
Aye.
Karapetian, Monassarian,
Abstain.
Meek,
Aye.
Megardician,
Abstain.
Miller, Povolitis,
Abstain.
Smith,
Aye.
and you.
I have 5 in favor, 3 abstentions. That passes?
Carries.
Okay. Item 5 on the agenda, staff comments. Nothing? Okay. Item 6, there are 3 sub-items under business discussion items. We will start with A, review of the committee's proposed language establishing qualifications for the city clerk and the city treasurer. Do we have a staff report on this?
Mr. Chair, we do not have a staff report. The committee will recall at your last meeting, we followed up with additional information requested by the committee relative to potential qualifications for the office of the city clerk and the city treasurer. The committee posed questions to staff, elicited further information, but there was nothing further that the committee requested be brought back at this meeting, other than discussion about potential proposals from the committee itself for qualifications for both offices.
All right. That coincides with my memory of the meeting. There were a couple of members who discussed bringing forth proposed language for some qualifications. I remember Denise is one of them. She's not here tonight. I don't know if she's gave anything to anybody else. No? Okay. All right. Does anybody here have anything they want to put forward for discussion? No? All right. It seems like that issue's kind of just died. I don't know if it's appropriate to formally table it, or any advice on how to go forward? I mean, we didn't have a motion one way or the other last time.
No, the committee didn't take a motion. To my understanding, the committee was still considering potential qualifications, and we didn't record, unless my colleague has a different recollection, that there was consensus around any potential qualifications. So it wasn't only that the committee was awaiting specific language, but that the substance of the qualifications was also,
Correct.
there wasn't consensus around that as well.
If we were to go ahead and vote to table it so it doesn't just get carried over, is that prevent us from, if somebody wants to bring back language at a future date, if there's time available?
I don't think it does.
Okay. Or do we need to actually table it in order to just move on from the topic?
I mean, as a future agenda item, the committee can discuss whether to bring it back or not, but you could vote to table it at this juncture. You can go either way.
Any thoughts on just how to proceed and move on from this topic for now?
I would say move on from the topic for this meeting. If Committee Member Miller said she was bringing back some language and she can't make it, maybe we can just roll it to the next meeting and see if she comes back with language and not spend time on it this evening.
That's what I was going to
Okay.
ask for too, if we can.
I don't have any objections to that. Before we take any actions, though, is there anybody who would like to speak on the topic from the members of the public?
We do not have any cards for speaking, no.
All right. Now is the time and place. And so this,
I'm sorry.
just to be clear, the topic is potentially adding qualifications to the
That's
position of an
correct,
elected treasurer.
I just want to remind the committee that there was a presentation made on the city of, I believe it was Huntington Beach, where it's one of the few cities that actually had requirements with regard to the city clerk. And there were requirements having to do with accounting background. There is a sense to me with regard to accountability, with regard to what is being tallied or presented and compiled. And you might want to consider that along with maybe changes in the role of the city clerk. I think that it needs to be expanded. Right now, that position seems to be amazingly constrained by the city council. And I would like to encourage this committee to review potential ideas on how that role can be expanded and therefore attract the right individuals to it. Thank you much.
Thank you. No other speakers? Bring it back to the committee. I will point out that you're correct. We were presented with language previously. It was the city of Redondo Beach, not Huntington Beach. Just to be fair to those beach cities. They're not all the same. Yeah, so thoughts on, are we okay with just simply carrying this over then and giving it one more shot on the next agenda?
Yes, maybe
All right.
keeping that in mind as well for the
Yes,
future.
Yes, no,
Sure.
perfectly fair. All right, so we'll move on to B then. B is a continued discussion regarding the Independent Audit Commission, including a comprehensive overview of the city's current internal audit and an example audit. Is there a staff report?
There is a staff presentation, and I'm not going to be the one to make it. Natalie is very excited about the presentation today. But what we did do was take the feedback from this committee back after our last meeting and decided to provide a pretty comprehensive overview of the existing audit function. We have the presentation actually broken down into 6 separate sections. A lot of this I will just preface by saying it goes in pretty in-depth information. If at any point we're boring this group, please somebody speak up, and we'll move faster. We'll forego some of the slides. But I think there was a desire to get a good understanding of what internal audit is, how we establish what's going to be audited, who's involved in that process, what an audit actually looks like, what happens after an audit is complete. And then the last thing that we also wanted to provide tonight was an overview of a benchmark study that we performed recently and presented to the audit committee. It reviewed 10 of our comparable cities to determine, A, do they have an internal audit function? B, if they do, how many people do they have in it? Is it purely done in-house, or is it co-sourced, or do they just outsource the whole thing with somebody overseeing a contract? So I won't go into any more detail at this point. Natalie will go into all the detail, but again, if we're going in a little too in depth, please speak up and we can kind of pull back from that. Be happy to.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair Flower and fellow Charter Review Committee members. I'm Natalie Manami Valdivia. I'm the Principal Internal Auditor within the Management Services Department Internal Audit Division. So as John mentioned, this presentation covers the two related topics, our annual risk assessment and our audit operations, and then also the results of the 2026 Municipal Internal Audit Benchmarking Survey comparing Glendale to our 10 charter peer cities. So with further ado, I will move on. As John mentioned, there are 6 sections that we're going to go through today. It includes the current internal audit structure, the annual risk assessment process, the audit project execution, or how we execute an audit committee meeting content, so the form and function of our meetings, a couple of sample audits, and then finally the 2026 Municipal Internal Audit Benchmarking Survey results. So starting off with section 1, the city currently utilizes 2 distinct audit functions. First is an external audit of the annual comprehensive financial report, which is mandated by the Charter, Article 6, Section 16, and is managed by the city's finance department. The second function, which is completely independent of the external audit, is the internal audit function that's established by ordinance, Chapter 2.82, and it's performed by staff within the Management Services Department. Sorry. So a common question is, what is the difference between external and internal audit? So I thought I would break that down a little bit. The external audit is performed by an independent CPA firm and is required by the charter and focuses on whether the city's financial statements are accurate under the generally accepted accounting principles. So you can think of it as checking to see if our financial books are accurate. Internal audit, by contrast, is an in-house function that's established by ordinance and evaluates whether operations, controls, compliance are working well across all city departments. So in this case, you can think of it as asking, are we running things well? So both serve the public's interest, but they answer very different questions. City Ordinance Chapter 2.82 governs the Audit Committee. The committee consists of 5 members appointed by City Council who serve without compensation. Members must be qualified electors or local business professionals with backgrounds in law, audit, or corporate management. The committee meets quarterly in compliance with the Brown Act. They meet the last Friday of the month following the quarter end, and its primary duties are to review the financial data and internal controls, recommend audit priorities, coordinate with city finance to select the external auditors, and then report annually to the City Council.
Biannually, end of fiscal year?
I'm sorry?
They report annually at the end of the fiscal year?
Correct.
Thank you.
This slide summarizes, I'm sorry?
Just a quick question. Their schedules, quarterly meetings, is that by ordinance or by their own planning?
I believe.
That was my question, too.
I believe it's a minimum of 4 times a year, is the way that it's stated in the ordinance.
Thank you, sorry.
No problem. So this slide summarizes the ordinance-based structure. The internal audit function and the audit committee were both established by ordinance in 1997, the function in February, and then the committee in August. The committee has 5 members appointed by city council, and internal audit reports to the assistant city manager administratively, and then functionally to the audit committee. So moving on to the second section related to the annual risk assessment process. We'll start by
May I
asking.
Go back again.
Sure, sure.
The audit committee does the audit and then reports to whom?
No, internal audit does the audits, and
That's
then
the
we.
staff does
Yes,
an audit.
yes.
And reports to the committee.
Yes, we report to the committee as well as the department head, as well as the city manager, and also we publish it onto the city's website.
So is this, how do I say, if the staff does its internal audit,
Mm-hmm.
all you do is look at it and then forward it on. You don't make changes, or you can?
No, the internal audit section has a staff of 3. Right now, there's only 1 position filled. We're in the process of recruiting for the other 2. It's the internal audit staff people that perform the audits on behalf of the city of Glendale. Once that audit is complete, it's then presented to the audit committee in a public meeting. And who's present at those meetings would be obviously the audit committee, the audit staff, audit committee members, myself, the finance director, and representatives from the departments in which the audits occurred.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so why do we conduct an annual risk assessment? We do this for 2 reasons. First, it's legally required by the municipal code, and also it requires us to prepare an annual audit work plan based on a risk assessment of all the city departments. And second, and more importantly, it ensures that our limited audit resources go where they matter most. So the risk assessment helps us to identify projects that will deliver value through risk reduction, cost savings, compliance, and efficiency gains. So the risk assessment follows a structured 9-step timeline spanning May through August with continuous monitoring throughout the year. Steps 1 through 5 take place from May through June. And then in late June, we have the final plan selection, and then we apply, late plan selection, and then in July, we take it to the audit committee for review and approval of the work plan, and then it's submitted to the city council, the audit committee approved work plan, and then in August, and then we continue to update on a quarterly basis. So step 1 is the risk assessment questionnaire. We begin by researching emerging risks and hot topics so we can inform and educate management before they complete the survey. And the survey is deployed via Microsoft Forms to department heads and administrators. The management completes the survey before our risk assessment meetings, and this allows us to review the responses, conduct additional research, and prepare focused follow-up questions. And then the results are compiled into a PowerPoint summary that is shared with the city manager. So step 2 is updating the master work plan. Our risk scoring model uses 4 risk types, each weighed equally. Compliance risk covers failure to follow laws, regulations, and internal policy. Financial risk addresses misuse or inaccurate reporting of city funds. Operational risk focuses on inefficient or ineffective business processes. Strategic and reputational risk is qualitative. Departments can flag whether a goal failure would damage public trust. All 4 dimensions are scored annually for each city function, and the final plan reflects which areas score highest, adjusted for director's picks, audit history, and judgment from internal audit in the city manager's office. Step 3 involves the department director's pick scores. So each audit candidate receives an impact, or otherwise known as consequence, and a likelihood or probability scores from 1 to 5 across the 4 factors that we just reviewed: financial, compliance, strategic, and operational. So in this particular slide, you can see that the directors, they can identify their top picks, and they are given additional weight. So you can see the impact score is 16, the likelihood is 13, and those two are multiplied together to get the risk score of 208. But based on the director's pick, it's weighted with an additional 20 value points, which brings the adjusted risk score up to 1,188. So basically, it will float the score to the top.
Okay, and an impact value is how it impacts the finances of the city.
For the financial section, yes, but there's each of the 4 categories. So we had, sorry.
Previous slide.
Yes, thank you. Compliance, financial, operational, and strategic.
It depends on the type of audit. When people think of audit, oftentimes their mind automatically goes to numbers and dollars and cents, and that's not what an audit necessarily starts and ends with. What we also want to audit is operations for efficiency. We want to audit contracts for contract compliance. You want to audit contracts for financials. So depending on what the intent of that particular audit is, that's the way that you need to look. That's the way we view the impact score.
You know, I can see the value of fire department to the city, you know, that would be high. And then the risk total is the previous 2. It's not a total on its own. It's a multiplication of the others.
Correct. And those are an addition of the 4 categories. So it's a ranking of 1 to 5 on those 4 particular categories that we spoke of: the strategic, the financial, the compliance, and the operational.
Would legal risk be one of these things that are captured in either compliance or reputational risk, that sort of thing?
Yes.
I just know in my own capacity as a city attorney and general counsel for other public agencies, I'm asked by the auditors regularly to confirm the status of certain pending litigation risks, so that's another risk. That's not necessarily on your books. You're not carrying it on the books that
Right.
you're being sued for $4 million, but it's something that the auditors will take into account. I assume that's the case here as well.
Correct.
Okay.
So can I just walk through this real quick?
Sure.
So the impact value, somebody is rating these 4 categories with a number of 1 to 5, 1 being the least risk, 5 being the highest risk.
Correct.
And it is an impact and a value. Those are multiplied to become the risk. Where does the director's pick come from?
So that comes from the survey that we send out. So we ask them, we provide them with a, basically a listing of the purchase orders and the contracts, and they're able to select certain audits, or if it's not purchase order or contract, if it's a operational, they're able to give us feedback on audits that they would like to see performed. And then if it's in our audit universe, we will designate it as a director's pick. If it's not in our audit universe, then we'll add it and designate it as a director's pick.
So when you say director's pick, is that the department head saying this is something I want audited?
Yes.
One being, do they rank it 1 to 5, or are they just saying yes or no?
I believe, I don't recall, but I want to say that we allow them to do 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. 1 being lowest, 3 being highest, or reversed on this case?
I think reversed.
1 being highest, okay. All right,
Correct.
got it, thank you.
Could you repeat that? 1 being
Highest.
highest?
So
Okay,
they're number
yes.
1 pick, number 2, number 3.
Oh, I see. And then could you explain the likelihood value, the difference between the?
Sure. The values?
Yes, what's the difference between, what does likelihood value mean?
Perhaps it might be helpful if you just take this example.
Right, and then just
Line 1,
kinda
Fire
like-
Prevention
yes.
Bureau Revenue Recovery Audit. What is it?
Right.
How was the impact value assigned? How was the likelihood of value assigned? Like, walk
Right.
us through that line.
Okay.
Is that possible?
So I didn't bring the specifics that back up these numbers, but it is made up of the financial, strategic, compliance, and operation impact value that they provided. So they provided a value of 1 to 5 for each of those categories, and then those categories were added together to make 16. So the total possible would be 20.
All right. So this was an average of 4,
Correct.
but it could be any combination that gets us to 20.
Correct.
Okay.
Because they're equally weighted, so
It could have a very low financial risk, but a very large reputational risk.
correct.
And that impact value is decided by the director of the department?
Correct.
Thank you.
And the likelihood value?
It's the same thing. It's also
Okay.
based on those 4 categories and is determined by the department head or the department
So
representative.
that, okay, that gives you the risk total, and then the director says, yes, notwithstanding the number, I still think that this is the most important one.
Correct. There is one number that is not determined by the directors, though, and that's the financial risk, and that's based on actual to budget numbers that we use analytics in order to analyze and populate.
So just to go back, impact is really, if it happens, this is how bad it would be, 1 to 5. Likelihood is how likely is it going to happen? 1 is not very likely, 5 is extremely likely. Is that, does that, if I'm right,
I think
that's what you're after?
That's my question, yeah. I just wanted to know what the column likelihood value means. Is it something that they think, or is it something that, the possibility of occurrence is an issue, or,
Yeah, I think 1 is if it happens,
Yeah.
what's the impact of, how bad is it? And then the second one is, what's the likelihood of it actually happening?
I
When
see.
you risk it, it's like if it's low risk,
Right.
is it high impact, low risk, or is it high impact, high risk, or high likelihood of happening?
Yeah, if that's the case, then it makes sense.
Correct. Thank you. Are there any other questions on this, or I'm going to move on? No? All right, then. So moving on. So step 4 applies qualitative adjustments beyond the computer risk scores. So there are 6 factors that inform these adjustments. So areas flagged as high risk through questionnaire, management requests, and director top picks. Areas not audited in recent years. Equitable department coverage across prior years. Available staff hours to ensure the plan is achievable. And then final review by the internal audit division, the assistant city manager, and the city manager. So there are other scoring rules that apply. For example, if a project has been audited within the last 5 years, we deduct 10 points. So that's the process that we go through.
Does it change if the prior audit revealed problems? Like
No.
just, so even though say, one audit area, there were concerns were raised in the prior audit, but we're going to move on to other departments that haven't been audited.
Correct.
But I would qualify that, and I would say that the only way that I would personally feel comfortable with that approach of saying yes and moving on is to explain that when an audit occurs and there are findings, then there is a mechanism in place to ensure that there's recommendations and those recommendations are implemented. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but either when there's a recommendation, it's either going to be implemented immediately or within a certain time frame, predetermined time frame. Staff will continue following up on that on a quarterly basis at a minimum to make sure that there's movement. If we're 2 years out and those recommendations still haven't been implemented, the director has to come to the audit committee to explain why and provide a time frame for that. There's an addition, and then there is a second opportunity for that to occur as well. So none of this happens in a vacuum. Once an audit is complete, it's made public, there's recommendations. We have about 3 years at most to get these recommendations implemented. Barring any unforeseen issues, it makes little sense to tie up resources on an audit that essentially resolved itself through the recommendations being implemented in such a short period of time. Does that make sense?
It does, to me.
Terrific. So step 5 is our individual risk assessment meetings with each of the departments. And in these meetings, we walk through the questionnaire responses and ask follow-up questions based on our pre-meeting research. We update the audit universe by adding, modifying, or removing projects based on discussions with the departments. Then we assign risk scores using the 1 to 5 scales with the financial risk informed by the budget to actual analytics from Munis. So we also review the department's vendor and contractor lists ranked by purchase order and contract amount, and then we obtain the director's top 3 to 4 audit candidates for inclusion in the work plan.
I had a question.
Sure.
When you say we do the risk assessment meetings, is it you and the assistant city manager, or who would be the group that does the meetings? The directors together with,
Who's we?
whose meetings?
So we would be myself.
Okay.
In the past, when we had more staff, it would be 2 internal audit staff would be in that meeting, as well as John is invited to that meeting, and the department head and whoever they would like to participate. So oftentimes, departments will bring their administrators or their assistants to provide feedback.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So step 6 is the final selection and proposed work plan approval. This process flows from the department directors who provide input at the risk assessment meeting to the city manager's office for review and direction, and then finally to the audit committee for the July presentation. And these key final steps include emailing all the executives a copy of the approved audit plan, reminding department heads that the work plan can be updated for emerging risks throughout the year, and preparing the staff report for city council presentation in August. It's also worth noting that many cities blend the risk-based scoring with director requests, fraud hotline, and discretionary referrals, and that is a practice that's consistent with our own approach. So I'm going to move on to section 3, which is the audit project execution. So what does an internal audit actually involve? There are 3 main types. There's the performance audit, the compliance audit, and the financial contract audit. The performance audits evaluate whether a program is achieving its goal efficiently. Compliance audits examine adherence to laws, regulations, contracts, and internal policies. Financial and contract audits review transactions and contract administration. So as you can see, our audit scope and scale, they range from quick data analytics projects at approximately 40 hours to limited scope audits at 100 to 200 hours, and then full-scale audits at 450 to 600 hours.
That would be a total of your time or the whole committee's time?
That would be a total of audit staff time.
So-
Not the outside auditor.
Correct, not the outside auditors. So a few key concepts that auditors use are the risk-based sampling, and so we can't always do 100% transaction review, so we will do on a sampling basis. And in order to do our audit, one of the major steps that we have to do is to gain an understanding of what we're auditing. So we'll be reviewing the contract, we'll be walking through the policies and procedures, we'll be sitting down with staff to learn what their procedures, what their daily operations look like, and comparing their procedures to what they actually do, and vice versa, to make sure that their practice matches their policy matches their practice. So So going on to the audit execution process, it follows 5 steps. First is the opening meeting in the audit program, where we research the best practices and we conduct an opening meeting with the department head, and we walk them through exactly what our audit steps will be, and we'll ask questions such as whether they know of any litigation or any fraud, or if there's any areas of concern that they would like us to focus on, and we get that information at that opening meeting. So we develop our objective, scope, and criteria and our testing procedures, and then we move on to the second, which is field work and testing, and executing our procedures, gathering our evidence, interviewing the stakeholders, and documenting our findings. So as we go through this process, we make sure whenever we find something that we believe is a finding, we immediately communicate that to the departments to make sure that our understanding is correct. So it's never going to be a surprise once we get to the audit finding, because we will have been communicating with them throughout the process. So the third is the draft report, where we prepare our findings, conclusions, and recommendations for the management review. Generally speaking, we meet with the operational staff first, again, to put all of the findings that we've had and we've discussed with them into a single document for them to review, and to provide their management response. So it's kind of our preliminary soft close, and then once we've gotten their responses, then we schedule a formal close with the director of the department, as well as John.
Who is the operational staff?
So it's whoever is the process owner of the area that we're auditing.
Can you put that in like terms of an example?
So for example, I'm currently working on an audit of the Fire Prevention Bureau. So the people that I'm dealing with are the fire marshal and the EMC.
Ordinance staff. So essentially, in layperson's terms, it's whoever is responsible for that particular part of that operation and their staff who are associated with some part of this audit. So typically speaking, when we're going to have our draft report, we'll have the department director in that meeting, the person overseeing the unit that was being audited, and any support staff that assisted in that particular audit.
And those people together are making the draft report?
No, the draft report is prepared by the internal audit staff.
And
Internal
presenting
audit
it.
staff is presenting the draft report to that group, and then that group will have an opportunity to provide feedback on that draft report, which Natalie will explain in a second.
Thank you.
That's the management response piece that she's going to talk about right now.
That's the next step that's coming up.
Couldn't help myself.
Sure. So the fifth is the final report. So like John mentioned, we will get those management responses and the agreement from management on our observation and recommendations, and then we'll issue the final report. And we don't wait until the audit committee meeting to issue those reports. We issue them as they're completed. So that will go to the department director, as well as the city manager's office and city council, and be posted to the, did I mention the audit committee? The audit committee, and also posted for the public on the city's website.
It is posted.
So moving on. So this slide focuses on our first step, which is the opening meeting in the audit program. So before the field work begins, we conduct our audit planning. Like I mentioned earlier, we do some research, and we interview the departments for specific concerns, and we look at best practices. And then we also review their policies and procedures and populate a risks and controls matrix that helps us determine the vulnerabilities and the internal control weaknesses to determine what will be reviewed during our audit. And then we'll meet with the department to scope the audit clearly. So we develop our audit objectives, what we're trying to determine, our scope and the criteria we'll use to make that determination, and then the specific testing procedures we'll use that we'll execute. So moving on to the second section, which is the fieldwork and testing. This is where we spend a majority of our audit hours. During this phase, we execute our testing procedures and we gather evidence. We interview the stakeholders and document all of the findings in our work papers. So all of our fieldwork is the evidence gathering foundation of the audit. So everything in the final report will be traceable back to the tested evidence.
When you are doing your field work, you're asking the people who actually do the work or responsible for the work to get their feedback in whether it's going well?
No, so we'll interview them on what their process is. So, for example, if we're auditing the Fire Prevention Bureau, we want to know how is it that we get the information? How do we get from scheduling an inspection to invoicing and inspection to the receipt of the proceeds and reconciling that information. So we'll ask them, walk me through how you would monitor this process or how you would perform this process. So that when we test it, we know exactly what the process is and where our evidence lies, or what documents we would have to obtain in order to support our examination.
Is it somewhat similar to what we're doing here? We're asking you to walk through your process?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And that's really the fun of internal audit. So just as an internal auditor, I think the best part of being an internal auditor is when you go to work, you're not going to do the same thing every day, because you're having the opportunity to learn a business process within your organization and then hopefully help them make it more efficient, find efficiencies that can make it better.
So I just want to maybe just respond a little more to your question, because I'm not sure we actually hit the nail on the head on that. Part of the field testing that Natalie's describing is going out into, physically, maybe it's the field. We're literally talking about maybe someone's office, and understanding the process, understanding what it is that they're doing and how they do it. Once the auditor has a good understanding of the process, determines that the process they're using is actually in compliance with the policies that are in place, because those two actually have to match, then is going to come the point where the auditor themselves are going to start doing some random sampling. And those random samplings are essentially going to determine whether or not that process that was described by the staff person actually pencils out in the end. Because in order for a process to be solid, it has to be, you have to be able to replicate it consistently over and over and over again. If any one of those things is out of an alignment, we're going to end up with some sort of a finding. And that's the finding that goes in the final audit report as a
And
recommendation for change.
They,
Is that
you
fair?
would not go
Yes.
in just saying, I want to audit the fire department. You have to pick something
You
within that.
have to be
process.
focused.
Yeah, you have to focus on, because just like the police and the fire, there are many different facets within them.
Correct.
And you have to, at some point, pick which ones. That's when going back to the director saying, these are my 3 priorities? Or is that something you decide?
Well, so they tell us what the topic is that they want us to review.
Right.
But like, for example, going back to that fire prevention, we might not know everything that is involved in that particular audit till we get there. So once we walk in and we ask each member that's associated with that process to walk us through their process, then we learn, oh, there's 6 different systems, and we get information, there's input from 6 different places, and then there's output to 3. We wouldn't know that until we walked in.
Right.
So that's where we would learn that, then we would ask for the documents from each of those systems so that we could test that it's accurate in its output.
It sounds exciting, actually.
It is, it's very exciting, especially if you're a numbers type person.
She keeps telling me that.
You could have a second career as a private investigator.
All right. So moving on. So next is section 4, which is our audit committee meeting content. So it's basically, I want to share a little bit, well, I guess John basically gave my spiel on the audit committee, so you all already know who attends, and we meet on a quarterly basis. And so just to walk you through, on a quarterly basis, there are, kind of similar to this committee, there are different things that can be put on the agenda, but routinely, these items are on the agenda. The normal, within the audit committee package is the agenda and the approval of the prior minutes, and then our internal audit report, activity report. So that report includes each of those 7 items. So on a quarterly basis, we report to the audit committee those projects that we've completed, the projects that are in progress, our continuous audits, our outstanding audit items, the outstanding priority 1 audit items, the outstanding audit items that meet the audit committee discussion criteria, and then any advisory services or committees that we participated in.
Does continuous audit mean something that you audit all the time?
So continuous audit, actually if you don't mind, I will walk you through that in a few slides because we're going to go through each of the items.
Oh, okay.
Before we move off this, what sort of actions might the audit committee be asked to take at a meeting on these sorts of topics?
On these
Are
particular.
they just simply receiving information the whole time? Is there a decision-making that goes into it?
For this portion, for the internal audit activity report, it's simply receiving information. So as part of this, we do present our audits, and they do ask questions, but there are no action items on them.
Thank you.
Sure.
So on that slide, when we talk about outstanding audit items, number 4, outstanding priority 1 audit items, that goes back to the comment I made earlier. Those are items that were recommendations in previous audits that haven't yet been implemented. We're still keeping it on the radar to say, we haven't forgotten about these. This is where we are on the implementation of those. This is what we anticipate.
Assessment audit.
No, earlier I was mentioning that once an audit is complete, the reason why we don't, yes, the reason why we don't, we deduct some points from an audit that had been completed within the last 5 years from being completed again, is because we're continuously monitoring that to ensure that the
And that's
recommendations are
where
being
that
put.
happens.
That's where essentially this is happening. Number 4 and number 5 is that regular, out front, public-facing, keeping the audit committee apprised of the progress of the implementation of those recommendations.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go into section 5, which is the sample audit. So I've selected 2 to walk you through today. And the first one is the fire prevention revenue recovery audit. So we've broken this out into 2 different parts, and we issued part 1 in December of 2025. And as you can see, the objective was to determine whether adequate controls are in place to ensure the Environmental Management Center center's complete, accurate, and timely revenue collection. So they have 3 divisions, and we've broken it down. And this report only reports on the Environmental Management Center. So the scope is the EMC revenue collection activities from July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. And our audit processes included interviewing the Environmental Management Center's staff, as well as GWP and Information Technology Department staff. So we also reviewed the citywide fee schedule and the accounts receivable aging reports. And we also review things such as contracts. In this case, the city had a contract with La Cañada Flint Ridge for its household hazardous waste disposal.
So that's where we were the service provider.
Yes.
Okay. What is the Environmental Management Center?
The EMC is the section of the fire department that accepts household hazardous waste, amongst other things. So people who have oil, chemicals, things of that nature can go and drop it off. If you're a resident in the city of Glendale, it's free.
I've done that. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an EMC, so.
Yeah. Well, a little plug for that. I just recently found out that you can drop off used motor oil at auto parts stores like
That's
O'Reilly.
worth-
I
that's
had
worth-
no idea.
That's worth too much these days.
Yeah.
So as a result of our audit, we had 10 improvement opportunities identified, and so we broke them down for presentation to our audit committee into 4 different categories. The first being the administrative oversight, billings and collections, regulatory compliance and fee structure, and then the system and infrastructure.
And those numbers relate to specific items?
Those are the specific audit report observation numbers.
What's the difference between an observation and a finding?
They're the same.
Okay.
How long does it take to do from beginning to end of an audit like this?
So these audits typically take between 400 to 650 hours.
50 hours, like daily? Like, could you translate that into like days or months or?
So we generally try to complete audits within a quarter, so within 3 months is our
3
goal.
months? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do you have multiple audits going on at the same time?
Generally speaking, when you have full staffing, you
Right.
have multiple audits, and the reason
Optimally.
and the reason why that's important is while one person might be the primary lead on an audit, there's a lot of cross-checking and peer review that occurs.
And additionally, in audits that we do, we haven't talked about continuous audits yet, but we do use an analytic tool called Arbutus to take a look at user access for each of the systems that's involved in each of our audits. So there are little audits within the big audit that we also perform at the same time. So moving on to give you a little bit of flavor for the types of observations that we have. So for the administrative oversight, during our review, we noted that there were key reports that had not been identified, and reconciliations were not performed to detect unbilled services, misstated accounts receivable, or businesses operating without permits. So our recommendation was to implement monthly reviews, monthly financial reviews. Another item that we noted was that based on the review of the billing detail and discussion with the Environmental Management Center staff, we noted that the industrial wastewater plan checks, initial permitting, and reinspection fees were not currently being billed, and there were 21 instances where there were fees like the publicly owned treatment works annual connection fee or the Coupa Hazmat state surcharge that were missing, as well as 46 inspections recorded within the Digital Health Department system, which records their inspections, that were not invoiced to customers. So our recommendation was to reconcile the service logs or the inspections database to the invoices that were generated. Observation number 9 that was also included within that section was that there were the late fees are not assessed for off-cycle accounts. And there's not a process in place to monitor customers that don't comply with their payment plans. So our recommendation was to standardize the off-cycle penalty timelines and to monitor the payment plan compliance. And then the last observation in this section was related to the annual permit fees being billed on a calendar year cycle that didn't align with the city's July to June fiscal year, or the state regulatory reporting schedule, or our fee schedule updates. So our recommendation was to align those. So the second category, billings and collections, our findings or observations included that our accounts receivable was skewed by approximately $100,000 in debt from businesses that no longer existed. And so our recommendation was to create a formal write-off policy and also to create a credit authorization form to ensure our aging report and the integrity of our aging report and prevent unauthorized fee waivers, which were found to be undocumented during our test work. So the second in this category.
So maybe you can clarify. So that $100,000 that you, I guess, ultimately had to write off, that was not a matter of not trying to collect it. It's like they were sitting on your books as an AR because there was nobody to pay it unless you, I mean, the business itself was gone, couldn't chase it down at that point.
Correct.
Okay.
So then we also found that there was a significant balance that was aged over 3 years. So again, our recommendation was that they document a collections and write-off procedure so that we get any items that are not collectible off of our books.
Not to say that the city doesn't have a collections agency who we have a contract with. That's a whole separate issue.
Just
I
a
was-
quick question. Oh,
Oh, I was just going to jump in kind of for the recommendation. I appreciate a few examples, but I don't know if we need to go through
Okay.
every single recommendation breakdown. I just like seeing the scope of them and everything, but.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
so I think John said, so you do the recommendation, and then there is a process, like he mentioned, that then at a certain time later, we go back and check if these recommendations or the changes have been implemented or What happens? And then you do another report? Or-
So the way that it works is after we've issued the report on a quarterly basis, we'll reach out to each department with all of their outstanding observations. So we have a Microsoft List database that we use to track all of our observations and their statuses. And by department, by responsible party. So we'll generate that list, we'll export to Excel, send it out to each of the departments and say, it's that time of the year again, we're at a quarter end. Can you please provide us with a status update? Please let us know if it's been implemented or what the current status is. And if it's not been completed, please provide us with a new anticipated completion date.
Yeah.
So there is a regular going back procedure, okay.
And I will say Natalie's being somewhat modest because it's not as simple as, hey, did you implement it? Yes or no? They're pretty, no, I know, they're pretty ruthless. As somebody who has had to deal with recommendations, it's like, show me. And it's not until she's satisfied that something comes off the list and is deemed complete.
Thank you.
All right, so then if everyone doesn't mind, then I'm going to go ahead and move on. So are we good with not going through the second audit?
Yes.
Okay. So section 3 is of the audit committee activity report includes continuous audits, and we kind of touched on this a little bit when I mentioned that in our large audits, we do have some smaller audits that where we use an analytics program called Arbutus that we've created scripts within that will make comparisons. For example, of the user access controls, so the listing of people that have access to a particular system, and compare it to the city's current employee listing. So we want to make sure, the objective of that test is to make sure that that all user access is attributable to a current city employee, and in the event that the city employee has separated, that we timely remove that person's access. So that's an example of a continuous audit, and you can see here we have a database where we track it, and we do, they're kind of our fillers. We do them in between or when we have some downtime in our larger audits. And then, yeah, so we do them in between because they are quicker audits because they're scripted and use analytics to process the information. And basically, it will spit out outliers for us, and then we can investigate the outliers to determine whether they're false positives or true exceptions. So moving on to section 4, which covers the outstanding audit items. So this is what we've kind of been talking about, where management still has pending actions. We track those within a Microsoft List database, but then we also output it to this dashboard. So you can see that as of March 31st, 2026, we were following up on 6 audits that were pending, and we had 7 recommendations that were implemented for that quarter. We had 2 that were partially implemented, and then we have 19 that remain outstanding that we will continue to follow up on. So this dashboard also shows the number of items by priority ranking. So as John had mentioned before, on a quarterly basis, when we go to the audit committee, we do have a section within our activity report where we list all of the priority ones, which are our most critical observations. So those come before the audit committee on a quarterly basis to be reviewed and to see what the department's current status is. So in addition to that, we, like John mentioned, we will also bring other items that are based on our resolution to the audit committee. So there are 3 instances where items will be brought to the committee, and those include if a department chooses to change the status of the recommendation or a particular recommendation from implemented to not implemented, then they're required to come and explain why the item couldn't be implemented, as well as if it's not completed within 2 years of the report date, and like John mentioned, also at 3 years. So they have to come a couple of times in the event that their item is not, their recommendation is not implemented.
The priority rankings that you mentioned, is that quarterly?
The-
That you go back and look at these high priority things?
So yes, we look at all of them, the priority 1, 2, and 3s, but the priority 1s, because they are the most critical, are, they're included within our quarterly report. So they basically get highlighted.
Okay.
I feel like I'm missing one.
You're not. That's it.
Okay.
So that's it. So that was a lot. That is kind of internal audit in a nutshell. If there are any questions about the process, the practices, anything related to what we just talked about before we go to the next section, now would be the time, I think, to ask.
Okay. So how many audits are you by yourself able to do?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
So I'm currently working on a fire prevention, the second portion of the audit that we highlighted. And then I also work on a few of those continuous audits. So like I mentioned, the user access control. So I don't have a number for you. I know that I've issued 2 this quarter. But if you're asking a different time frame, I'm not sure. So far this quarter, I've issued 2 continuous audits.
Yeah, I'm just, basically, I'm trying, I know you have questions, to get at, it seems like that with a city as large as we have, that you need help.
Certainly. We would both agree, and we're in the process of bringing on hopefully 2 additional people, and we'll talk about some different models in a second.
Okay.
But to directly answer your question, I think it's fair to expect that there will be on average, between 3 and 5 audits per auditor on an annual basis. Those are the big audits, the ones that'll take between, 160 and 460 hours. Sprinkled in there are some of these continuous audits that also occur. So if you were going to ask how many total audits, including the
Yeah.
continuous, it's not uncommon to have 3 staff complete, over 20 audits a year.
I guess my big overall thing is, there's a lot of things to look into, and somehow that, every department head's going to have their top 3, which means you've got, 75 things you need to go through that you can't do. And that's why I think you need more people.
And we wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think that logistically, the end result of that also, which is not a bad thing, is you also need people to implement those recommendations. And some of those implementations come with system upgrades. They might come with the need for additional bodies to do X, Y, or Z. So there is a much larger implication when we talk about adding staff to do more audits. Then you have to really be aware that, eyes wide open, you're going to end up with a lot more to do at the end. Again, not a bad thing. It's just the reality of staffing up audit also means you're going to have to staff up across the organization.
Well, it's your organization, plus, like, if the fire department isn't collecting their bills, they need to have, get somebody on that,
Absolutely.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where the following up for your whole department.
Could be.
Okay, I'll let somebody else speak.
Linda did announce that she had to leave because she had a class.
Okay. So I had a question for John, actually. So I think it's a continuation of what Stephen was saying is, could you just kind of give us an overview, just for my own, edification, basically, how many departments there are in the city of Glendale, and, how many clients or vendors potentially they might have?
Well, I can tell you the easy part of that is 14 departments.
14, okay.
And that's going to vary. You know, small departments like my own or the city attorney's office might have a handful of contracts. We don't really deal with vendors all that much. You end up with a department like Community Services and Parks or Public Works, who's going to have quite a number of contracts and vendors. Glendale Water and Power. Glendale Water and Power is an interesting one because a lot of their contracts and their industry is very unique. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. Some of the types of audits that have to happen in that type of a setting require intensive and extensive knowledge of the operation itself. The example I bring up is one of our previous internal auditors, who actually was our finance director as well, Michelle Flynn. When she had to perform a specific audit in GWP over a decade ago, she spent the better part of 6 months in GWP learning the energy trading business in order to qualify herself to actually do that audit. We don't have that luxury today. So one of the things that we look at is somehow co-sourcing or bringing in somebody from the outside with that type of knowledge, as well as the qualifications to be able to perform an audit in that setting. So that was kind of a long-winded way of me telling you I don't really know the exact number of vendors, but we're talking hundreds of vendors.
All right. So I think that each department would have several, like, Stephen was saying, several possibilities for audit. So I think that having one or two staff people is not, it's something that we want to look at, right? And you were saying.
I would agree that if yes.
Thank you.
I'm better at answering other questions posed to other people as opposed directly to me. And you're looking directly at me. What?
Can I just make a comment? Very impressive. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. All right, then I'm going to move on to the benchmarking survey results.
If I can do a quick intro on this?
Sure.
What we're about to see, I think, is the last part of our presentation, and this is a presentation that we made to our audit committee last week. The reason we did that is for the very reasons that we just discussed. Committee member Manasarian's question and Committee member Meek are hitting it right on the head. We know full well that two staff people cannot take on the load of an organization of this size. We have 3 positions. At its peak, this department had 6 or 7 individuals in it. That headcount has been whittled down to 3, primarily because of budget reductions. And the reason why we had 2 people in this position up until recently and kept 1 vacant was because we used it as a budget balancing strategy as part of our ongoing budget was in the organization. Some might say that's being penny wise and pound foolish. I'm going to, kind of cut to the chase and put that out there before somebody else said it, but I acknowledge that. So what we did was, before we went and determined what the future of the internal audit operation looks like, what the optimal number of staff is, what models currently exist out there, we decided to go out there and do a benchmark study of the 10 comparable cities that the city of Glendale compares itself against. Historically, these are the cities that we've used for compensation comparisons with all of our different associations, and we felt it was appropriate because the reason those cities were picked was because they were similar either in size, scope, the multitude of services they offer. They might be oftentimes full-service cities. So we surveyed 10 of them to determine what their models were. How many people do they have in their internal audit operation? Who do those people report up to? Is it an individual like myself, or is it an elected individual, or is it a committee? What their budget is, the total number of audits that they themselves perform, and I will say that I think the information that Natalie is going to share with you is going to be rather interesting. And I will say that, I'll kind of cut to the chase for an organization that doesn't have nearly as many employees on average, not lately, but on average, as some of the other agencies. The number of audits that they determine they do, they said they do, compared to the number that we were doing with 3 or 4, was far in excess. So a little bit of something I'm proud of, but I'm going to turn it over to Natalie too. We're small but mighty.
Thank you. All right, so moving on. So, let's see. So, turning to our second major topic of today's presentation, the results of the 2026 Municipal Internal Audit Benchmarking Survey. Like John mentioned, the survey was designed to help the Charter Review Committee understand how Glendale's internal audit compares to peer charter cities across the region on key structural and operational dimensions. The survey had a dual purpose: to benchmark Glendale against comparable cities and to inform this committee's deliberations on the future structure of internal audit governance. So Glendale's internal audit division sits within the Management Services Department with 3 authorized full-time equivalents, but we are currently operating with 1 FTE with 2 vacancies. We sent the survey out to 10 peer charter cities. However, we only received responses from 8, which include Anaheim, Burbank, Huntington Beach, Inglewood, Long Beach, Pasadena, Santa Ana, and Torrance. So of those 8 cities surveyed or that returned our survey, 63% or 5 cities have an active internal audit function, while 37%, including Inglewood, Huntington Beach, and Santa Ana, did not have an internal audit function. So among cities with active programs, 80% use a fully in-house model with dedicated city employees. And then Anaheim, Long Beach, Pasadena, that included Anaheim, Long Beach, Pasadena, Torrance, and Torrance. Burbank uses a co-source model combining staff and external firms. So in that case, I did reach out to Burbank, and they indicated that they use a number of hours of their finance department staff, so they would have 3 to 5 finance staff do a couple of recurring annual internal audits on an annual basis, and then the remaining internal audit is outsourced or co-sourced to an outside agency. Correct. So based on our survey, we found that there were no cities that fully outsource their internal audit function. So Glendale's in-house approach is consistent with the regional norm. So moving on, looking at staffing and budget, Glendale is also positioned in the middle of the peer group at a budget of $500K to $1 million and 3 authorized FTEs. Although we're currently operating with 2 vacancies, we fall below Anaheim and Long Beach, which both exceed $1 million and have 6 to 10 or more dedicated staff, but we're above Torrance and Burbank, which operate on smaller budgets. So this mid-range positioning reflects a program with meaningful capacity when fully staffed. So moving on to reporting independence structures, they varied considerably across our peer cities. The most common model used by 3 cities is reporting to the city manager's office, which is consistent with Glendale's current arrangement. 1 city reports directly to city council, 1 to the council-appointed audit committee, 1 has an elected auditor, and 2 report to the finance director. Notably, Anaheim uses a hybrid governance model where the audit committee includes the mayor, a council member, the finance director, the city manager, and the assistant city manager. So as you can see, there's no single dominant model, and each reflects different priorities around independence and accountability. So all 5 cities within the active programs conduct annual risk assessments in-house. None rely solely on an external consultant. The methodology varies. 3 cities use a risk-based scoring matrix similar to Glendale's. 2 use a cyclical or rotating schedule. 3 use discretionary referrals from the city manager or council. And 3 use a hybrid approach. So Burbank notably has a collaborative process that involves both management and the audit committee. So Glendale's blended approach, combining risk scoring, director picks, and management judgment, is broadly consistent with our peers' practices. So moving on to the audit volume and focus areas for the last 24 months, Glendale completed 37 audits with an average of approximately 2 full-time equivalents, which is a strong output relative to our size. Of those 37 audits, 27 were those continuous audits, those shorter analytics audits we spoke about, and then 8 were compliance audits. 1 was a contract compliance and 1 was a system audit. So that kind of provides the answer, I think, to your previous question. We got approximately 10 larger size audits completed within 2 years, as well as 27 continuous audits with approximately 2 staff members. Comparable cities completed between 1 and 2 audits on the low end, and then 6 and 10 on the high end over the same period. So, and I think that it's important to note that our peer cities focus primarily on revenue and tax compliance, operational efficiency, IT and cyber security risk, and contract compliance. So the question related to professional standards also varied across our peer cities. So 2 cities, Long Beach and Pasadena, they follow the GAGAS Yellow Book. So that's the generally accepted government audit standards. And then Anaheim follows the Institute of Internal Auditors Red Book standards. Burbank and Torrance, they follow the internal policy frameworks, though Torrance did mention that they are actively transitioning to the Yellow Book. Glendale was the only city using a hybrid Orange Book approach, and by Orange Book, I mean that we combine both the Yellow Book and the Red Book requirements. So this dual framework approach is different than what our peers apply, and reflects our commitment to both government accountability, which is the Yellow Book, and also our professional internal audit standards, being the Red Book. So the key takeaways from the benchmarking survey was, first, in-house delivery is the norm. 80% of the active programs use dedicated staff, consistent with Glendale. Second, Glendale's audit output of 37 audits in 24 months with approximately FTEs is comparable to the larger programs like Long Beach and Anaheim. Third, Glendale is positioned in the middle of the budget and staffing range. Fourth, our hybrid Orange Book approach is unique. We're the only city using both Yellow and Red Book standards. Fifth, our independent structures, the independent structures varied widely with no single dominant model. And then sixth, the survey findings, that's this, that we, because this was a presentation to our audit committee, the sixth was that we would share our findings with the Charter Review Committee. So that completes our municipal internal audit benchmarking survey, as well as my presentations. I appreciate you all allowing me to take the time to walk you through all of these processes, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So just to lay this out, questions from the committee.
Okay.
Public. Thank you. Sorry. I was just saying, let's go around and make sure that all of the committee's questions are answered, and then we can take public comment on this item.
Thank you. I have, I think, 2 questions. Are we going to have a separate, sorry, it's late, presentation on external audit, or today is, I don't know if it's in the plans, because I want to see what comes after this and how they're related. If not, then I'll ask my second question.
We were not planning on having
Okay.
any of the additional presentations.
Okay, so my question would be then, is an external audit done at the same time from an outside source? Or if we have the second or the third reports when things are implemented, then it goes for another review by an external audit company? Or,
Correct, I understand.
Service, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand the question. The city doesn't employ any external auditors to audit anything that the internal audit department has already audited. The city's finance department employs an external auditor, and that's a requirement under state law, to audit the financials on an annual basis. So we do have external audits that are performed in the city on the financial side. That's separate and apart from all the work that happens with our internal audit staff. The two are very different.
So all this work, when we have, let's say, final 2-3 year report, whether things have been done or haven't been done or the way they've been done, who does it go to? Who reviews all this after your work, if there is a system that is being done?
So that's on the quarterly follow-up. So when they meet one of those 3 criteria that's set by resolution, to come to the audit committee, and the department heads are invited to attend the audit committee and to close out that issue, because we will stop following up on it after 3 years. So it's considered not implemented. So they will have to come before the audit committee to explain why that item was not implemented.
Thank you.
Sure.
Not to mention that they'll have to justify it, not just to the audit committee, but to the city manager as well. I mean, at the end of the day, if there were findings in an audit that were important enough or valuable enough to be listed as a public finding, they should be implemented. The expectation is they do. Now, there are times where some of the findings can't be implemented, and we initially thought that they could. An example of that would be something that has to do with software or platforms. In order to implement some sort of a recommendation, the current systems can't do that. It would require us overhauling the entire ERP system. We anticipate doing that over the next 3 years, except for some time during the span of that 3 years, direction changes, and we're not going to be doing a wholesale replacement of the city's enterprise resource planning software. Huge undertaking. That means that recommendation can't be implemented. So, the city manager is going to ask the question, why? That's the answer. And even if I'm okay with it or the city manager is okay with it, the audit committee members are going to have to be okay with it as well.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I was going to ask a particular question from Natalie, or actually John also. Is there an audit department that audits the audit department?
That's what was my
Watchman.
I almost said there are no auditors that audit in my previous. No.
Internals all the way down.
That is not part of our practice.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And to be frank, I'm not sure what they would technically be auditing, because like I said, an audit has to be focused. So what exactly would an audit of the internal audit function be auditing?
Well, I think it's more like, I guess, if I may say, and it's not directed to you because I love this report and this is really telling, but it's more like the job performance or the efficiency of the department and all that. And I'm not sure if the other cities have had departments like that. I mean, have had that done or not in the past. I'm not aware of that, and I don't know. Maybe you do.
It's a great observation. I don't know that they have, but I always viewed our audit committee as that oversight body, because if we're not performing to the appointed audit committee members' liking, they're not going to be shy to speak up.
Nice.
So there is some level of oversight
Right.
of the audit function. It comes from the Management Services Department, but ultimately it comes from the Audit Committee, and above them is really the City Council. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm trying to think how you actually choose what to audit when you have 14 departments and they each have 3 top picks, so you have 42 things to choose from. Do you make those choices?
So no, the choices are again going to be based on that risk assessment that that we showed with the different calculations, and then once that's completed and we take into account those other criteria, such as whether we've had an abundance within one department, or whether we've audited that section, that particular item before, then it's going to reduce that score, and then that final adjusted score is given to, well, I would take it to the assistant city manager, and then it goes to our city manager, and they get to have their input as to which they would like to see audited as well.
And then the process doesn't end there.
Then we go.
So then that would be a recommendation of things to audit based on a variety of factors, like our known risks, our known resources, or lack thereof in that particular time frame. And we would take that to the audit committee. I know I'm invoking the audit committee's name quite a bit tonight, but that's intentionally because the audit committee does have a very significant role to play in all of this. The audit committee gets to see what the proposed work plan for that year is. When I say work plan, I'm talking about the list of audits that we intend to do. And at that point in time, there is an opportunity to say no, or to ask a lot of questions, or to make a different recommendation. Ultimately, we would be, are obligated, we would, regardless, take that to the city council, because the city council is ultimately the body that approves the annual audit plan.
So the continuous audits are always there.
Right.
But the directors who give you their picks, those could be brand-new things each time you speak with them. And that's where the decisions come in. And I guess you just take those and then you present those to the audit committee, or you do investigative work first?
We present that to the city manager's office first, and then to the audit committee. And so that's done on an annual basis, but then on a quarterly basis, we also do a quarterly risk assessment. So where we mentioned that we take a look at vendor contracts or vendor POs, that dashboard goes out on a quarterly basis. So that basically looks at a few things. It looks at top contract dollars, top contracts by dollars, but it also looks at contracts that are due to expire within 2 to 3 years, or those that have low remaining balances, which we define as 5% remaining balance. So if something comes up within those quarterly reviews, then they can always contact us and let us know, you know, this was not a concern previously, or this is not something we asked for previously, but we'd like to have this taken a look at, maybe because we're going to go out to RFP. They want to know how did the vendor perform as part of their evaluation going forward. So then we would take that and we would go through the same process. We would take it to the city manager's office and say, okay, there's a concern, or there's an audit that has been brought to us, and then it would be reevaluated, either stuck on the audit plan or the audit universe for next year to be evaluated, or if it's deemed something that we want to look at immediately, then it would be added and our audit plan would be adjusted.
So this would be, I'm just thinking of ideas like, I'll see in the city council agendas that, hey, the GWP wants to do this RFP, it'll be $23 million. I'm making up the number. And is that something that would come to you to audit, or that would just be them saying this is what it'll cost, and afterwards is when you would get it audited?
Again, you need, an audit has to be focused. An audit has to be focused.
Yeah.
So a department proposing to issue an RFP that could potentially cost $23 million. I think the one you're referring to is the water meters, the water meter replacement project. At least the numbers kind of jive. So let's just say it's water meter replacement. At that point in time, we don't have anything to audit.
Right.
But once it's implemented, we can certainly go back and audit what was done to determine if there was any issues present. But when we're going to go back and and actually audit something, it needs to be slightly focused. I mean, what are we looking at? Are we looking to audit the transaction for contract compliance, make sure that they, abided by the terms of the agreement? Are we going to audit that contract for, I want to say cost overruns, but what I'm really referring to is change orders? I mean, I'm kind of stepping into your world now. I am not a certified auditor, by the way. I just play one on TV. Is there anything I'm missing?
No, that's exactly.
Did you sleep at
So we-
Holiday Inn?
So we would come in at the tail end.
Yeah.
Now, if this was more of a recurring type transaction, I think that it would be fair to use your example and say, you know, GWP does this quite often and their contracts are quite similar. Different types of things, but they're quite similar. We want audit to come in and audit our last, you know, 2 contracts or processes to ensure that when we put out the next RFP, that we have all of our ducks in a row. We're not continuously repeating the same error, or we're building in a level of efficiency that there's room for at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
One, great presentation, and you do
Thank you.
great work. I mean, for the staffing you have, you do something really comprehensive. So I hope 2 quick questions. One, when it comes to yellow books, red books, orange books, and internal policy, is one considered a gold standard over another within the industry, or are any of them considered acceptable?
So that's a great question. So the Yellow Book is kind of the gold standard for government agencies. But the IIA Red Book is the standard for the internal audit practice.
Okay, so orange just blends the 2 of them.
Correct.
And then the second question is, John mentioned that the audit plan goes to the audit committee. So obviously, they're going to get your proposed work plan. Do they also see the things that you chose not to audit? So in other words, when you do this risk assessment, and there's a long list, and now you've got to pick whatever number it is based on your staffing that you can do, do they get to see do they see the entire risk assessment and your recommendation for what you audit, so that if they want to make a change, they can go, hey, wait a minute, I think this might be higher risk, or do they just see the proposed work plan?
That's a great question. I don't recall whether or not we send the entire audit universe or not.
Okay.
I just don't remember.
No, I'm just looking at,
getting no comment.
my question is really more geared at oversight, going, okay, if I'm sitting on a committee like this, and someone comes in and says, hey, we propose to audit 6 things this year, it looks good when you walk in and say, yeah, okay, I'll rubber stamp and approve that audit thing. But I
what
guess,
aren't you
but it's kind of like going, hey, in order to kind of go, if I want to ask an intelligent question, the other half of the equation would be going, hey, what does the risk assessment matrix look like citywide? And then going, okay, I concur with the judgment that these would be the ones we would audit, or I don't concur with the judgment, or I have questions and would like to propose a modification. That's sort of where I was aiming with the question.
And it's a valuable question, and interestingly enough, Natalie and I were talking earlier today about this very topic. We've begun to question some of these processes ourselves. One, I forget which one it was. It was
the waiting for the director's pick.
right. It was how the director's pick is weighted, but there was another one with the committee itself. Oh, and it was the fact that when we go to the audit committee, their approval of the audit plan that goes to council has been done as a motion to note and file. We want to change that moving forward. We actually want a motion recommending, adopting and recommending council's approval of that audit plan. Goes directly in line with the observation you just made. I see absolutely no reason, well, I shouldn't say absolutely no reason because I haven't really thought that fully through, but I don't see a reason as I sit here today why we wouldn't provide the full list of the potential audits that we could have done. Of course, we may have to redact certain information if they're related to security or things of that nature.
I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV. So I said, setting aside that, I'm just kind of going, okay, what information would I want if I were sitting on an audit committee to help inform me as to whether, the recommended plan makes sense from my world, or what I would have in questions, and whether you have to redact or close session parts of it. I would leave that to the attorneys. As I said, it was just kind of going to where it is. I think in reality, again, thank you for the information, because I said it's a lot of detail where probably we're not going to go. I think we're going to end up discussing something more higher level and philosophical in terms of like, where does it report to? Should it be in the charter? But as I said, from what I've seen here, and yes, I've had some experience with you in my prior life. But I mean, look, if you're a manager of an operation and you want to do well, you want an internal audit. You want to know if things are going well, because you may think things are going well, and maybe an outside set of eyes is worth it, because someone might just ask a question going, what about this? And it's not that they know the answer to it or something, but it's like going, oh, I hadn't thought about that, and we need to think about that. So as I said, from both sides, you do tremendous work. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have to add that Carl was one of my favorite clients, because he was very forthcoming with information, so it was great.
Are there any more questions about the report? No. I have one, and it's about the public input at the beginning of the process. So like bringing forth the results of the audit to the committee, they get to see it, and they get to see the prioritization list. But if the public comes forth with a concern, whether they know somebody who works at City Hall who alerted them to something, or they have independent reason to think that something really should be a focus, that there is a risk. Is there a time for those public concerns to be brought forward in that process? And is there any process for responding to those comments? And I bring this up because, that's why we're here. Is people have concerns about the city's finances. They know that there's an internal audit function. They should now, because everybody's watching this meeting. And what you've shown us is that you take your job very seriously, you're very conscientious, and that this is just an aspect of good management. But yet, I think there's going to be a perception, regardless, that people complain and nothing will happen. There's no response. There's no chance for them to say, oh, I have a concern about this aspect of a city program that I interacted with. And I think that should be part of your audit process. Is there anything for the public to, other than knowing that they come in at the right time when that agenda is being set for the annual risk assessment? Or how would you handle the public?
I don't think you have to wait until the annual risk assessment. I mean, we deal with this on a regular basis. The venues to air those are varied, and they're wide. It's everything from contacting appropriate people. If there's an allegation of waste, fraud, or abuse, you could do it anonymously using the city's anonymous hotline. That's for employees or any member of the public. That's taken by somebody not a member of the city of Glendale, and the very few people get a copy of that information that's shared. City attorney, I believe, is one, city manager, the HR director, and maybe one other person. Oh, the internal auditor. So I knew there was one other person. So that's one venue. The other one is certainly you can come during oral communication at an audit committee meeting and voice that concern. Because at the end of the day, the audit committee could recommend that something be audited. We'll still need the city council's approval to amend the audit work plan, but certainly that can come up at a public setting. City council's the other one. And ultimately, one last thing, you can go directly to the city attorney, confidentially, if need be, if it's truly something that's serious.
If it's like an actual whistle.
Right.
I guess, public comments is one way. Per the Brown Act, you can't, if somebody brings forth new information or a new concern, it can't be addressed right then and there. So is there an established feedback loop to say, okay, we've heard this, it's being taken up? Because somebody might come forth and say, I have a real concern about this program, and I think that somebody's skimming, and you hear it at the mic, and you go, okay, somebody will follow up with you, and they follow up with you. But then when the annual, risk assessment is done, it's not on the list.
I will say.
And so they think, oh, they're hiding it.
Yeah.
That gets to what I think Carl was saying. It's like the things that aren't going forward, you can't do everything. You do a lot, but you can't do everything. But the public has no sense, or I don't know how the public would get a sense of, you were heard, we looked into it enough to say it's on the list, or it didn't make the list because.
Right. I would reasonably, not reasonably, I would just respond with, the example of someone skimming those types of allegations likely wouldn't make it on an audit list in the
I
first
know.
place. That's something that we would either investigate in-house or we would hire an outside investigator to investigate.
Or something
And that's
like.
not something that necessarily gets
I know, I'm just trying to
broadcast.
think of a concrete example,
Yeah.
but like, that somebody will come up
Right,
to the mic and
yeah.
raise as a concern. And when it doesn't get addressed at a meeting, for Brownick reasons, people just hear the accusation and then they don't hear the response. And so the public gets left with the impression that, and this is way outside the charter, but it's just something I've observed here and in watching other meetings, and it's apropos of this topic. It's why we as a charter committee are addressing this topic, because people are demanding changes to the audit process, but I don't know if they understand that they have an ability to affect that process.
I will say that part of it gets into a philosophical conversation.
Carl said we get there.
Right. But I'll give you a concrete example with a bit of a response and something that maybe we don't do as well as we could or should at times. Allegations of skimming or fraud. The prime example is the housing choice vouchers, or better known as Section 8 vouchers. There's always an allegation of, I know someone who got Section 8 when you've been saying that the waiting list has been closed for 20 years. They must have paid someone, blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's a lot of allegations, a lot of examples. But there's also a lot of rationale and reasons as to why what you said is partially true. Yes, somebody did get a housing choice voucher when somebody else was told you've been on the waiting list for 20 years. They didn't get it from Glendale. They were a portable voucher from a different city. And that's something that's allowed under the federal guidelines. What we can do, and what we are actually going to do in this particular example, is we're going to hold a study session of sorts to explain to the public who continuously hears snippets of this how the program works. A lot of work, but it's something that we have to do. That's just one example of a multitude of potential allegations. We can't address every single one of them, but I think when they do arise, we just have to do a better job of maybe explaining the process as best we can and hope that people recognize that we're being authentic and responsive.
With that example, scope-wise, is that something that the audit committee could handle if it was legitimate, or are you addressing it because it's not really something the audit committee could do? Or sorry, not audit committee, internal auditing. Section 8 abuse, I'm just trying to get a sense of the scope that the internal auditors can take on as far as
I think there's
perceived
some-
corruption from the
Yeah.
public.
I think there is an aspect of the Section 8 program that can be audited. I mean, have you done one?
We have done a review of Section 8 previously, so we could walk through the process and see how someone was selected. So it would be a process audit. So in that case, when John's saying that it's a portability, then we could review how those portability vouchers are accepted in Glendale.
Cool, thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, we open up to public comment?
Yes, we have two speakers. First one, Rudy.
I'm giving my minutes to Herbert Milano.
Thank you. Mr. Milano? You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much for this fine report. This report that you have in front of you means nothing if it doesn't get budgeted. If the city council decides during the budget study session that you're only going to provide $500,000 to this, all of this work is for nothing. It is up to this committee to insist that we have about 1% of the general fund assigned to auditing, because every dollar that you put into auditing is $2 that you're saving. This is incredible to actually have this. You saw it at the federal level, right? When a year ago they decided to start cutting the individuals at the General Accounting Office, all of the jobs that had to do with oversight, they were cut right away. Why? Because corruption was the intent. If you want to stop corruption, you need to fund this. And you have to put it in the charter so it doesn't get cut out. One person doing an auditing for a $1 billion entity is insane, but it happens, right? What doesn't get audited? Well, we have an individual in the police department who earned $222,000 in overtime, and I requested the data. I found over 10,000 hours of overtime without coding. Chief Politis, no codes. That was just like giving somebody says, okay, you want some overtime? I'll give you 8 hours here. No code for any particular activity. That deserves overtime, but why doesn't it get reviewed? Because of the structure that I showed you earlier. If the fire department employees and the Police Officers Association helps to fund and promote a candidate, what is the exchange? Don't give us oversight. That's my interpretation of what is happening, because you have millions of dollars in overtime and no audits. The last time the fire department truly got audited was about 10 years ago. So why isn't it that these departments are not getting audited? Why is it that there's not enough money for the staff? Because it's not in the interest of the city council members to have those departments audited. You need an independent, fully independent entity that is not assigned by the city council members, because these are the very same people that they selected as part of the audit committee. When I mentioned to you the Advanced Development, Inc., the fraud that occurred with low-income housing, the city of Glendale filed a $30 million lawsuit to try to recover the losses on that. Do you imagine that report ever get to the audit committee? The chair of the audit committee was the campaign chairman of one of the council members in 2016. The chair is the campaign manager of one of the council members. You need a totally independent entity, 5 individuals that are paid for with monthly meetings, professionals that are not selected by the staff and not selected by the city council. I wrote such a document for your consideration. I'll resend it for you. It is that essential, because auditing saves the city money. All of the abuses that are taking place, all of the exponential increases in payroll are coming out of overtime, and nobody's auditing. The same thing goes with all of the projects, with all of the change requests, with all of the additional cost. So you have projects that start at $500,000, wind up at $4.5 million. Nobody's auditing because there is no staff to do it. The impact of 3 city council members to direct what gets audited or not get audited is there. It's not that the city manager is incompetent or that the assistant city manager is in cahoots. They need to do whatever 3 city council members want them to do. And if they don't want those contracts audited, they're not going to get audited. If they don't want the staff audited, they're not going to get audited. That's why you need an independent entity. And it is up to this committee to present it. And if the city council doesn't want it, then we will know. You will have direct evidence that they don't want it. So you lose nothing by proposing it. Propose an independent committee of 5 professionals, especially those individuals who have experience, right, in really investigating, doing the type of auditing that is in-depth. And they should be hiring the city auditor. That way you have full independence. So your committee needs to do 2 things. Insist on a fully independent audit commission. It is the best thing that you can do for the city. Because if you have a strong audit commission that has powers to subpoena, I can tell you that there are many people who will never run for office because they know that the contracts that they want to do, they probably won't get through that committee. We already have a huge problem with Measure A, which removed the request for proposal of the most qualified, lowest bid candidate, potential vendor. The city council removed it. That alone should be reason enough for you to propose it. Measure A is an opening to corruption, and they moved it with false information. You need to protect the finances of the city, the revenues that the city gets, to make sure that in the future, for decades to come, no person running for city council thinking that they can actually manipulate those contracts will desire to run for office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano.
May I respond to
Well, I have a question about Measure A.
Yeah.
Since it was raised. I don't want to,
That was one of
if
them.
we go off on if I'm getting too close to the violation of the Brown Act, just tell me. But I just wanted, for my own edification, I didn't think that Measure A was self-executing.
It was not.
It's not. And it requires some sort of council action to actually implement that change.
Yes.
Has council taken that action?
No, and that was one of the two things that I wanted to
Okay.
clarify, so it wouldn't perpetuate itself as a fact.
Okay. So Measure A, although approved by the voters, would allow for the
Best
council
value.
to act to change that standard for certain contracts. Council, notwithstanding that authority, has not exercised it.
Correct.
Thank you.
May I
Oh,
respond to the other issue?
Second point?
And I don't mean to sound argumentative with Mr. Milano. It has, his comments are his comments, but the one thing that I didn't want to leave out there as a purported fact was that a $500,000 contract somehow balloons into a $3 million contract without any oversight. That would be impossible unless there was some level of fraud that I have not seen in this organization or nearly anywhere else. In order for us to have any additional money beyond what council's approval for a contract was, we would have to go back to the city council for authorization and an appropriation. So I'm not sure how a $500,000 contract turns into, $2.5, $3 million worth of change orders when council hasn't appropriated those funds or approved the amendment to those contracts. That does not happen administratively.
Thank you. So now it returns to the committee. Is there anything further we want to do with this topic of the audit committee vis-à-vis the charter? That is our mandate, is to review potential changes to the charter.
Would it be within our purview to state in the charter that the city must have at least 3 people as internal auditors? He looks toward it.
Well, I have thoughts on that, but Carl does too.
I have to do,
I don't know.
but I think Mr. Garcia was going to.
Yeah, I would just say on a purely legal, technical perspective, that could be a provision that's inserted into a charter. However, I would note, I don't think we have any other charter provision that says you have a certain office must have a certain number of people. So it would be certainly highly unusual, and I think, I can't speak for the city manager's office, but it'd probably be something, as a general practice, you want to avoid having staffing minimums in your charter because you lose flexibility down the road if the circumstances dictate it.
So rather than putting it in the charter, we could recommend to council that they bring in some people to help with the auditing?
The one thing I would note, that would probably be outside the committee's purview.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. That's not our
Certainly,
charge.
if committee members have thoughts about it, and then we could share those with the council, but that particular issue, how a particular office gets functioned within the city isn't really the committee's purview. It's just whether or not you think it's a good idea to have a charter required audit commission.
Okay, thank you.
So the charter does address this in one point, right? It's, end of page. Article 6, Section 16, and that just talks about having a CPA.
Correct.
Nope, it says. But that's the external audit
Right,
only.
that's for the external audit
Right, so
only.
there's no comptroller function that's
No,
enshrined in the charter.
Not in the charter.
And would it add anything? I mean, nobody's proposed to eliminate the internal auditor. I mean, it's currently understaffed, but that, I mean, again, I'm just trying to connect what we've been talking about, the concerns that are being raised by the public, to what we are charged with doing, which is to review what's in the charter, what could be in the charter relative to this topic.
I had a question.
I'm not even necessarily in support of necessarily saying there must be, because then we're going to question also, are they elected, are they appointed? That's a big can of worms. I'm not.
So is it within our purview to maybe recommend an external audit?
Well, there already is an external audit called for, both by state law and the charter. So this
Do you
is
mean-
really
I
more.
Do you mean
independent,
outsourced?
sorry, independent. Not, sorry.
Well, I mean, it occurs to me, what do we mean by independent? Are we going to elect 5 new members of an audit committee and have them serve? Well, then, why aren't they just potentially subject to corruption as the city council allegedly is? If they're not going to be elected, who's going to appoint them? I just don't, I mean, if everybody's independent, then it's just anarchy anyway. So, I mean, I just, there are ways to ensure accountability. I don't know what is meant by independent in this context.
I could answer that.
Sir, we haven't each had 6 minutes yet. Thank you. I don't know, do people have thoughts on that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say I appreciate Mr. Milano's comments each week, and I think the issues he brings up with police overtime and nepotism in contracts are very real issues that, you know, we wanted to fix, and that's why we looked at this audit committee, because it seems like a good place to start. But as I heard the scope of the audit committee and everything, I just don't quite think it's the silver bullet to address some of these, especially with how limited audits can be. I think they're just bigger problems that need to be tackled in other venues. But I will say, I mean, the thing that did keep popping up for me is, I think a well-staffed, well-funded audit committee is such a robust, nice thing. I'm just trying to think if there's a way to put it in, to protect it in the charter, because I do see what Mr. Milano was saying is that when budget cuts come, it is very ironic and very tragic that the first thing to go is people that would be looking over the budget for corruption and waste and efficiency. And so the charter does seem like a possible place to put in some protections or guardrails, whether it's minimum staffing is very worrisome. I'm trying to suss out the reason why it went from 6 down to just Natalie. Those are just my immediate thoughts. So no.
And the question is, where does the charter come in? I mean, how can, I think your question is valid too, and I'm thinking to make that connection. That's, you know, just
No,
to your
and
point too.
That's where my thinking is about when it goes, okay, what can be done in the charter specifically? Not to say these aren't issues that should be addressed, but what could be put in language in the charter? And as someone who, you know, I've been kind of limited, and you don't want to put anything in stone that's going to cause more problems later on. Nothing jumps out to me.
Yeah, thanks.
I think the toughest part of putting anything in the charter in terms of the budget or how many people you want is difficult because almost all departments in the city are understaffed, underpaid. So which one do you choose is difficult.
city attorney's office. Sorry. No, but I mean, that's actually, I mean, the charter says there has to be a city attorney. It doesn't say how many attorneys are in that office, but, you know, budget concerns and practical concerns over time will call that out. This is maybe an inflection point for management and the council to realize that there's a real concern about the understaffing of this department, but that doesn't mean we necessarily have to enshrine it in the charter, but I don't know. Well,
So maybe, kind of listening to some of the concerns, and as I said, the work is really good, but it kind of comes down to two things. I don't know that we're going to solve every problem, because ultimately, we're going to elect council members, we're going to elect folks that run city government. They're generally, they appointed us, they're going to appoint people to do that. Somewhere, I guess we have to have faith in that overall system. So I have two thoughts really for discussion, because I'm not necessarily advocating, I just want to see what the reaction is. So one is, maybe we do put into the charter something about the requirement for an audit committee, and that audit committee must approve an annual work plan for the city's audit. I don't want to get into the how, because maybe it's done internally, maybe it's done maybe it's done externally. It's like, I did have one question, someone can answer in a minute. It's like, for like the investment portfolio, who audits that? Do we have an external auditor that does that? And if we do, I don't want to presuppose what the best way to do it at any particular time would be, because that may change over time. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there, because when we were discussing elected versus appointed city treasurers, I don't think, it wasn't me. Somebody mentioned the potential of having the audit committee report to the city treasurer as an independent outside. It's an elected person, but it's not the city council. So you have another independently elected person who could, if they so chose, raise the alarm, wave the red flag, you know, but they have some formal thing. I'm not quite sure when we're looking at the slides, there seem to be multiple reports, or do we consider having the city treasurer as like an ex officio chair or part of it, so that there is some level of independence from another perspective, helping determine what the audit plan is and engaged in that process, but still with the check and balance of going, hey, you still have to report to city council what the findings are. So I just throw it out for thoughts.
No, I mean, not
That's
just
the best
'cause-
legal term I have for the
Not
night.
just because of the Latin. Because you're not creating a new office. They say-
Well, I mean,
if they report to the treasurer, my concern is, now they just have, the people who want to influence the auditing decisions for their own personal gain, only have one person to talk to about.
Yeah, and so, look, I don't think, truly independent becomes a real
Yeah.
challenge, because either they're
Right.
appointed, they're elected, as you said, it gets into there. So if the makeup of the audit committee is either left vague, or the treasurer is allowed to appoint, the city manager is allowed to appoint, and council is allowed to appoint, hopefully what you do is you get a round thing, and the treasurer is an ex officio member of that committee. Again, I'm kind of spitballing off the top of my head, where at least that's an independent elected official. It's independent of council, and so they have something to say. And maybe one of the reports, because I noticed it seems like there were correct me if I'm wrong, there were green checkbox where, like, certain cities, there was a report to, like, director of finance and city manager. Am I missing that?
They had dual report.
So they had a dual report. Well, it'll drive you nuts. But if you add a third person, we're going, hey, there's a third independently elected person that we basically entitled to review all of the material. There is at least one other person who can look at something and go, hey, we have a problem, or has input into that process. So I'll just throw it on the table and
We're gonna
hit
have
the
to,
button.
we're gonna have to raise the treasurer's pay then. I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm
no,
not
no,
just
we'll
kidding.
get to that.
We've had that discussion. What do people think of that idea? But practically speaking, if you wanted to put that in the charter, you'd have to bring the audit committee into the charter.
Well, and at least right now, I guess what I'm kind of saying is maybe we should put the audit committee in the charter.
I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying,
We
yeah.
already have it. It's, it happens to be by ordinance. So all it would really require is, we might have to do a little thinking about whether we have to put numbers, but the charter would require that there be an audit committee. So, a city council, a city treasurer, whoever, can't go say, oh, no, we're not going to have an audit committee. You got to have one. Look, I'm not sure I'm going to solve all the issues that may be brought up by members of the public, but I said I'm just looking for something maybe that potentially put something out there. Again, I'm not sure, I'm just throwing it out there for thought. Do we want to put something in that does that? And keep it relatively simple, much like the city's required to have a civil service commission based on the charter. It doesn't tell the Civil Service Commission everything that it has to do.
It tells it a lot.
Well, this one probably tells more, because it says you must have rules in these areas, but I don't think.
Most cities don't.
Yeah, I don't think in this case you have to necessarily specify what it is, other than maybe it needs to be involved in approving an annual audit plan, whatever that is, and then you let the audit committee sort of hammer that out and figure it out from there. As I said, again, not strong advocacy here, just kind of putting something out there and see what everybody else thinks, because I'm only one voice on that, so.
John, you mentioned that you were looking to hire a couple more internal auditors. Can you, one, tell me the process? Is that you hiring them, or how does that happen?
Sure, it's the same process for any other position citywide. Currently, we have 2 vacant positions that are allocated to the internal audit operation. So essentially, at this point, the Human Resources Department will float a bulletin for a specified period of time. The Human Resources Department will determine who meets the minimum qualifications. Natalie will get the list of potential candidates. We'll vet those applications out, and then we'll host some sort of a testing process. That testing process could be varied, but it could entail some sort of a written exam, maybe a skills-based, knowledge-based testing, but certainly an oral interview. For the oral interview, what we typically would do in a situation like this is we would bring in an outside panel. So it would be people, professionals, other auditors in the field who are familiar with what it takes to be an internal auditor. And what I mean by that is there is a very big difference between external auditor skill sets and internal auditor skill sets. We've actually had experience where we thought, maybe they can just translate over, and it's two different worlds and it takes some getting used to. Once the oral interviews are over, there will be a second interview with Natalie and likely myself, and then we would select a candidate.
Okay. And the second half is the audit committee itself. Is that appointed by the city council the same as any other committee, commission?
Correct.
Thank you.
I didn't see anything important. Where I think we are at this point is grateful for all the information we've gotten, the public's interest. But are we interested, just as a practical matter of managing our own business, are we interested in continuing this discussion? It's almost 8. To come back and consider something like Carl's idea that he is so forcefully and passionately advocated for this evening? I'm being facetious, of course. It's a good idea. No, like
you can tell me I'm all wet.
No,
It would've been the first time.
you have given me pause and something to think about. So it's not a solve for everything, but it's potentially a way of addressing the issue of independence and bringing that into the established process. It's not a huge disruption, but it allows for a potentially more direct public input into that internal auditing function, at least as an oversight. So I am ex officio curious. Do we want to come back and talk about that some more? But I also don't want to just keep beating this. And I don't think that you've given us a lot of time already. And I don't think, I'm not of the mind that we need to necessarily have, this is an us question, not necessarily a question for the auditor.
So I had a comment to that, Steve. I think that each one of us should be given an opportunity to kind of think over what we just heard. It was a lot, which I thank you again. But next time when we do have our meeting, just to start with, if we have any recommendations, as opposed to, well, let's have another round of discussion about this. So if we do, then fine. If we don't, then we move on. So that's just my suggestion.
My only hesitancy is I don't want it to just be, okay, we come back and we remind ourselves what we were talking about a month ago, and then we go, well, what's a good idea? Use the time, use the month, write down your ideas.
That's what I was
Yeah,
saying. It's like
and-
have a concrete, this is what we think, is it doable or
I
not?
just keep
on
marking
this
out my
kind of-
copy of the charter, and, like, where would I put this?
Well, if it gives you pause, I will try to put some language together. As I said, I just don't want to do it if there's no interest in
Yeah.
going forward. But if it's something that's worth a discussion, then I'll try and put some language together in the next month. That kind of goes, all right, here's some ideas or options we can play with, or not.
I mean, bring concrete ideas.
Yes.
As opposed to, well, let's, review it again or something.
I think we owe the public and the council who put us in the position to give it a good faith try, at least, and not just say, well, we don't know, it's complicated. Let's come back with something. And if we decide, you know what, this is really complicated, we start pulling apart the pieces of what the treasurer is, and then, or we try to shove the audit committee into the charter and it becomes, unwieldy, we can step back.
I just wanted to voice, I like Carl's idea. I think it also doesn't solve a lot of problems, but it seems very similar in function to the Civil Service Commission. And so to put it in the charter and to solidify it. Not that I'm super worried they'll get rid of it, but this is the type of stuff charters are meant to produce or protect. And I guess like just to have the visibility to put it on the ballot in front of the voters might be a lot to bring awareness to the audit committee. Not that that's a reason to put it in the charter, but it just seems to legitimize it a little bit more. You seem perplexed. Oh. And then the only other thought I had is this minimum staffing funding, but I guess the idea is that's unheard of in a charter, that type of action's never really taken. Not that I'm interested in pursuing it, but I was just
The
curious.
U.S. Constitution doesn't even say how many people are on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
They don't, they didn't put staffing in there. So.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I agree as well. The topic has been important enough for us to come back, and I don't think we should limit it with the presentation. Let's do our homework, really not come back and go over this again. We have a great presentation. We can watch the video again, and if we all think it should be, we discuss and then decide. But not forget about it today.
If that's the case, then we'll just continue this discussion, but less focused on all of this information, which we now have, than to focus on the charter.
It's okay if you don't know, but do you guys know if any other city that you mentioned has this in their charter to have a committee?
We can look between now and the next meeting. Yeah, I don't know.
Right, doesn't Long Beach, they have an elected auditor, that's got to be in their charter.
And I think Riverside does as well.
MLA has one.
Yeah.
But they didn't respond, is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
And is the only
Well, you know
other
what, sorry,
the-
they have an IG, which is a little bit different.
is the only other commission that's explicitly established in the charter the civil service?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. There's nothing further. We have item C. You have a hand raised, though.
I just had a question because I wasn't sure after we brought this topic back, do we have anything else that's outstanding?
The last topic, A, which was the qualifications for the city clerk and city
Okay,
treasurer.
is that it for now?
There's
or-
that, and then
Yeah.
C is a new topic,
Oh, okay.
And we
but it's an
also-
old topic.
And we also just have general cleanup
Yeah.
language
Okay.
throughout the charter.
Okay.
Small stuff. Cleanup stuff.
Or big stuff.
Didn't we cover that at the beginning?
We did some of the cleanup, but not all
Oh,
of it.
there's more,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
always more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember we started that
Oh.
just so you all
We
could
wanted to get a feel for
yeah, you
it,
wanted
get
to
our
bite
feet
something
wet.
off, yeah.
Okay, all right. So, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is review of charter language related to fund accounting and related finance cleanup. It is 8 o'clock.
Understood, and actually.
Is this something that is,
I was going to suggest it anyway. Our Director of Finance, given we're in the middle of budget season, was not able to make this meeting. So I can explain the legal issues, but it'd be very useful for you to be able to hear from him on the finance side why some of our charter provisions don't make sense in the modern accounting world. So I was going to only give you a high level of where we're at and what we're asking for anyway. But I think it would make sense to push that off till the next
okay.
meeting.
My preference would be just go ahead and push it off rather than.
Yeah,
We've had a very
exactly.
good discussion this evening on these topics and to
Yeah.
read the staff report. I'm curious about the history of why it failed the first time on this next item, but we can deal with that next month. So, any objections? Okay, so just to recap, A, we're continuing, B, we're continuing, C, we're continuing.
But you made progress.
Thank you for recognizing our effort.
We did, yes.
Okay.
People will think we didn't do anything today, but it's 8
Well, they can watch
o'clock.
the video.
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. That's why we're continuing all the rest.
I think this presentation was extremely important for us, but more so for the public as well. So thank you.
And we've touched upon that idea a couple times here, and is that the demonstration of the process is as much as important as the outcome of the process. Item 7, reports, information. One day it's going to happen.
Not today.
Okay. Future agendas. We're going to have A, B, and C. Is there anything else coming at us? The cleanup one, but,
Right, but I think between A, B, and C, you'll have enough to tackle.
so that'll carry us into July? Haven't looked at when the first meeting of July falls.
Could very well
Did
be
we
our
address the
last.
calendar already?
Then that's July 2nd would be the first, right? We do the first Thursday? That's July 2nd, so, right,
Can we have a topic on the next agenda?
Yeah.
To look at our calendar?
sure,
Okay. In case we need to move a meeting.
will do.
We do have one public comment.
On future agendas?
Yes.
Okay.
Herbert Milano.
Members of the Charter Committee, my name is Herbert Milano. I would like to make a suggestion that one of the topics that is coming up on your agenda, which is a charter and audit commission, that I could recommend individuals who can make a strong presentation that have a significant amount of experience. One of them, his name is Rick Cole, who's prior mayor of the city of Pasadena, prior city manager of the city of Santa Monica, prior city manager of the city of Oxnard. He has been, in his 72 years, involved pretty much 50 years of it in either as an elected official or running the city or being the mayor. And he has an extensive amount of experience with regard to the issues that cities like Glendale has with its strong financial problems. And I think that the idea of discussing all of the options that are available requires an expert that you can invite. And I recommend the chair to take the action, or you can recommend to the chair, that for individuals like this that I could recommend. As well, I could recommend individuals that I happen to know who are on the board of GASB, who can come in and tell you what some of the weaknesses are, even today, with regard to the external audit as well, and the way that we actually create the financial statements. I presented to the City Council an idea, extensive, and I may have sent you a copy of how that charter would look like, that charter amendment. So I strongly suggest some experts to be called in so that you can get a more rounded view of really the potential that you have by creating a really good audit commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.